Hello, everyone, and welcome to WYOPASS Legislative Session and Resource Management Plan Update. We have two special guests from the Wyoming County Commissioners Association, Bailey Brennan, Natural Resource Counsel, and Jerimiah Rieman, Executive Director.
My name is Bailey Brennan. I'm the Natural Resource Counsel for the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. So I deal with any federal natural resource issues or natural resource issues that have any kind of federal nexus. So pretty broad charge. I'm going to chat with you all today about initiative that we have going on to help counties develop and revise their county natural resource plans. They're also called resource management plans. I think in Utah, they call them resource management plans. So the legislature, Wyoming legislature, in 2019 made available funding for each county to prepare or revise existing county natural resource plans. So up until the last fiscal year, at the end of June 30th, 2020, each county was entitled to up to $50,000. And now there are some funds available in, actually comes out of the Federal Natural Resources Policy account. There are funds remaining in that account earmarked for any additional needs counties have for natural resource plans. Counties are in various stages of development and review. Bighorn County a couple of weeks ago finalized and adopted their natural resource plan, and others are just about to finish or are looking at finishing up this summer and fall. Not every county is preparing a plan. Like Laramie County, I think Laramie County, definitely Albany County, are not planning on developing a plan. And that's in part because, and I'll talk about kind of a bigger picture of what these plans are intended to do. They really apply to public lands, not private lands. So they're not the same as like a comprehensive plan or a land use plan. Which is why Laramie County, while interested, just thought it would probably be better for other counties to use those funds because they have such limited public lands and resources. So it's really an opportunity for counties to think about objectives and priorities as they relate to federal lands and resources within their jurisdiction, and how they'd like to see those resources managed. And then once a plan's in place, it can be used as a tool to help counties communicate and coordinate with federal agencies who manage those resources and communicate objectives and priorities that the county has for management of those resources. So it's not binding on federal agencies, but federal agencies are required by law to review these plans and address inconsistencies between the county plans and their own federal plans in either a NEPA document like an EIS or final decision document. A lot of counties are also including socioeconomic information as part of this review and revision to their natural resource plans. So looking at things like employment data, revenue, things like that, jobs, things like that in relation to just kind of this economic and socioeconomic status of their counties. This is a list of the resources that must be addressed to the extent it's applicable in each plan. So it's really broad. It touches on, a plan will touch on a lot of different resources. I think that's the last thing I had on county natural resource plans. And please feel free to interrupt me with any questions that you may have on these plans. I know planners are mostly looking at private lands in your counties, but there certainly is, some overlap and just what happens on public lands affects what happens on private land. So if there are any questions, I'll just pause for a minute, see if there are any questions. Okay. I also wanted to use this opportunity. Angela asked me to just talk about some other issues that are happening on public lands that may be of interest to county planners. One of them is migration corridors. Over the last few years, the Wyoming Game and Fish Department has designated a few different corridors, migration corridors, across the state to protect seasonal movements of mostly mule deer, but they're considering looking at corridors for pronghorn as well. The beginning of last year, February 12th, Governor Gordon issued an executive order kind of setting state policy for the designation of migration corridors. The EO he signed applies only to mule deer and antelope corridors, and it creates a process for identifying, designating, and then managing migration corridors. As part of the EO, the governor contemplated creating working groups that would advise the governor and state agencies on how best to manage corridors, and then actually also some insight as to whether or not corridors should even be designated in the first place. One important aspect of the EO is that it does not apply to private lands. And there were 3 corridors that were already designated at the time the governor signed this EO, and that's the Platte Valley, the Bags, and the Sublet mule deer migration corridors. So the first task for the governor's office now is to convene working groups for each of those 3 designated corridors to review them and then think about management action. So the Platte Valley Migration Corridor Working Group started meeting about a month ago, and it's made up of a commissioner, county commissioner. John Espy is the commissioner representing Carbon County, and then sportsmen, conservation, landowners, industry, a variety of representatives, representing different interests. So they will continue meeting for the next couple weeks and develop recommendations to submit to the governor's office in mid-March. And then I think we can expect an additional 2 working groups to be convened over the next year and a half to look at the Bags corridor and the Sublet corridor. So interesting, certainly while the EO doesn't affect private lands, what can be done on private lands, private land development certainly has an effect on migration movements. And some counties in the state, mostly Teton County, have elected to think about those seasonal movements in their land development plans. So it's something to think about. And then the next couple slides are just thinking about the transition at a presidential level and its implications for regulations that affect Wyoming, and administrative and agency actions and presidential as well. So President Biden ordered agencies to review a lot of different regulations that were passed under the Trump administration, including the ones that I have listed here. Waters of the United States Rule, BLM Greater Sage Grouse, and then ESA and Migratory Bird Treaty Act regulation revisions, as well as implementing regulation revisions for the National Environmental Policy Act. The administration hasn't taken a position on any of those regulations, just directed agencies to review them. And then there's a Department of Interior secretarial order that is now in place, and it's halted agency actions related to a number of different things, including NEPA analysis. So no initiating any kind of NEPA review no resource management plan amendments or revisions, no issuance of right-of-way, easements, or land exchanges, and no oil and gas leasing. This order is only in effect for 60 days, so it's temporary in nature. The order that's getting a lot of attention right now, especially in Wyoming, is an executive order President Biden issued banning oil and gas leasing on federal lands nationwide. He signed this order on January 27th, and it applies to all federal minerals. This would include any kind of split estate or fee-fed situations. Fee-fed being where you drill on private surface into private mineral and then directionally drill into federal mineral estate. Any kind of drilling operations that hit federal minerals are included in this order. There's no time period tie. There's no like expiration date on the executive order. This is for an indefinite period. It does order a comprehensive review and reconsideration of federal oil and gas permitting and leasing practices. It's yet to be seen what that kind of comprehensive review and consideration will consist of, or how long it will take. This is not an order banning fracking, as we kind of heard during campaign, and it does not prohibit the development of existing leases. So any developer that holds a lease or held a lease on January 27th still holds that lease and can develop it. We are hearing that the executive order may affect the way agencies are kind of implementing those leases or reviewing applications for extensions or other requests along those lines. I think there's still also a lot to be determined as far as kind of how this leasing moratorium will roll out on a kind of state and field office level. So that's all I had on kind of the presidential transition. I'm happy to answer questions about that. I just wanted to plug a publication that WCCA has. We, over the last couple of years, put together this Wyoming Public Lands Handbook. It's the 3rd edition of this publication that we've done. And it's a really great resource for counties, but I think it would also be, to the extent county planners are interested, a great resource for you all as well. It provides an overview of public land laws and regulations, so anything from NEPA to the Clean Air Act. And it also provides, and I'm an admin law nerd, so I had fun writing this section, but it includes an overview of administrative law and regulatory and agency law that is really helpful when it comes to environment and natural resource issues. And then it also provides a section on what it means to be a cooperating agency, how to coordinate with federal agencies, and work on building and maintaining those relationships over time. It's available on WCCA's website, wyo-wcca.org. We also have hard copies if anybody's interested. I'm sure we can figure out a way to get those to you as well. And that's all I have. So I'm happy to take any questions. I know that was a quick overview, but yeah, happy to take questions if there are any.
Hey Bailey, this is Megan over in Campbell County. Has WCCA, would you guys ever consider like a repository of everybody's natural resource plans, or at least like links to them, like on your county and the county information page? Like a direct link to their every county's natural resource plan, just as an easy way to get to all of them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we store socioeconomic profiles that we have 4 counties on our website right now. And as counties finalize their natural resource plans, certainly, yeah, we'll put them on the website. So it's that same WCCA, maybe got our address wrong. I'll plug it into the chat. But yeah, keep an eye out there for it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? I'll throw my contact information in the chat too, just in case anybody does have any lingering questions or wants to reach out. So thank you.
Have any counties completed their natural resource plan?
Yeah, so Bighorn County just completed theirs a couple weeks ago. And I think there are a couple others who were set to finalize in the last week. Campbell County also they developed their natural resource plan before additional funding became available. So they have a really good plan in place already. So yeah, there are a handful of other plans finalized. Great. Thanks for the opportunity to chat with you all.
Thanks, Bailey. Okay, so Jeremiah, I see you're on now.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. This is Jerimiah Rieman. I'm the Executive Director of the County Commissioners Association. Appreciate the opportunity to just say a few words. I will say I'm stacked between bills. Thankfully, we've got a bill that has a number of amendments right before mine. So, but it's possible that my staff will jump in and say I need to jump to that, and I apologize if I need to depart quickly. I was asked to just talk a little bit about the legislative session and perhaps some bills that might be of interest to all of you. We're nearing the end of this bifurcated session that we're working in. For those that aren't aware, the legislative body met in standing committees shortly after their January 12th meeting to consider primarily committee bills, those that have been worked through the interim, and to try and prepare those for this virtual session that we've been in since last Wednesday. We're in the last couple of days, committees, or sorry, both the House and the Senate are considering the work that has been done through those committees. They're on second and third readings right now in the final House. So today and tomorrow they will finish all of the legislation that they intend to take up during this virtual period. They'll then go through concurrence on those bills and then send them to the governor's desk for further consideration and signing, veto, whatever he may do with any of them. From here, after Friday, they will send additional bills to committee. That will include both, again, committee bills as well as individual bills that have been announced so far. And those will be taken up in standing committees for no more than 3 days, starting on February 22nd. You know, I'll be really honest, nobody knows what 3 days that week they may meet, what the format will be, whether it be in person, virtual, some combination of both. There's still a lot of questions to answer there. And then they intend to come in and complete their legislative work in an in-person session starting on March 1st, going through April 2nd. And that's subject to adverse public health conditions. I'll tell you, nobody knows what those adverse public health conditions are that might prevent them from meeting. I think most of us expect that they're going to be meeting in person and taking up, in particular during that time, the budget, the supplemental budget, and making decisions around that. Trying to think if there's anything else that I could say about that legislative schedule. It is odd. It's weird. It's difficult to get a sense of what might come up, when it might come up, and so really do have to pay close attention. In terms of the number of bills that have been released so far, the House has released just over 102 total bills, 2 joint resolutions. The Senate is just short of 100 at 81 Senate files and 1 Senate joint resolution. I have been told by various people in legislative leadership that the vast majority of these bills, including anything that could be coming forward up through, I think, March 5th, a lot of that stuff is not going to be considered. The big things, of course, are the budget, public health orders, maybe some adjustments there, and various other sort of smaller committee work that's being undertaken. I did kind of go through the legislative list to get a sense of what might be of interest to you, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I found about 8 or so bills that seem to impact your space or might be of interest beyond that. But House Bill 14, this is a rights of way along public ways amendment bill. This came out of the Joint Corporations Committee from the interim. What they're trying to do here is force some decision making at the local level, whether it's at the municipal or county level, as well as state agencies on permits that might be sought by developers of broadband or other communication systems. It does have perhaps a broader touch than that. That bill was scheduled to be up in the House Corporations Committee later today around the noon recess. We've heard that is no longer going to happen, that the communication industry, which didn't ask for this bill and has some concerns with it, they're working on an amendment, and so expect to see that one come up in the March session, if at all. The next bill I had, and I'm actually going to talk about 2, is House Bill 28, which is the wind tax exemption repeal. That deals with the 3-year exemption that currently exists before the wind production tax comes into place. And so they're looking to repeal that, which would make the tax effective on new wind turbines that would be approved. It wouldn't impact those that just were built and are still in that exemption period. Sort of in that same vein, just in the last day, House Bill 94, which deals with solar electricity generation taxation, did come online. And what the sponsors intend to do there is tax solar in the same way that we tax wind generation. I bring these forward not because I suspect you're overly concerned in the tax debate, but rather the implications that could be positive or negative around those for development in the state. I will tell you that I have also seen a bill. It has not been released, but I do anticipate that it will be, that would extend the wind tax exemption from 3 years out to 6 years. And of course, that will have a negative impact on revenue, but could have a corresponding positive impact on development. I don't know how far that goes, but I am aware that it is out there. House Bill 67 deals with a geothermal energy review, and that would set up a process and group to go out and look at geothermal energy across the state to identify possible places to develop those resources. It has some pretty heavy sponsors. Again, I don't know how far it goes, but it is out there. House Bill 72 is the transfer of water and sewer district operations. This is a bill that would allow for municipal governments to assume a portion or all of the responsibilities of a water and sewer district in that actually touch the municipality or perhaps even come into the municipality. This comes out of Casper and is something that we're taking a look at to see whether the commissioners might have opposition to that, but it is something that is being considered. House Bill 79 is a subdivision bill. This comes from Representative Duncan. This goes in and touches the sort of ag exemption. And my best read of it, I haven't had a chance to dive into it completely yet, is that it is a cleanup bill to make the ag exemption changes that were made just a couple of years ago to extend both the holding period, initial and possession periods out to 5 and 10 years. So I think it's a cleanup bill, but something to take a look at. Senate File 4 deals with airport districts. Mostly this is about trying to establish airport districts to help make them more sustainable from a funding perspective, but it certainly could have some interaction, I suspect, in the planning world. That bill actually seemed to be getting some traction in the Senate. It ran up against a lot of questions. They've kicked it back to committee, and so it won't complete this during this 8-day session, but we expect that it will be worked during this period between now and the March session and could come forward for passage during that period. Senate File 76 deals with the Broadband Development Program, and it's intended to get at a portion of the existing broadband program that was set up during the endow process that was really looking at unserved areas. And so this actually would allow for use of the available state funding, which I think is about $10 million for middle mile broadband projects where there aren't existing conduit lines and other broadband space being taken up. So that could be something that you'll see come across your desk as if that's approved and they do expand that program and more development happens as a result. The last one that I'll mention, there are going to be a couple of industrial siting bills that will amend various portions. I know there is one out there that largely deals with neighboring landowners in relationship to industrial projects. The Appropriations Committee is expected to release a bill that would change the process for local governments, establish a definition for unmitigated impacts, lower the amount of available funding that would be distributed to local governments. It was discussed in Joint Appropriations Committee just over a week ago. Again, I expect that to come out and be considered in the March session. We will likely oppose that bill, although we do agree with some components of it and have asked the department to take up those issues administratively. So those are the things that I had quickly for all of you, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about session or any bills that are up for consideration. Quiet group.
Can you hear me?
Yes, is that Joy?
Yes, it is. Hi, Jeremiah. One thing as planners we've been finding over the years, and I think we may have spoken with you about this before, is it's really hard to have a single source for interpretation of the statutes. And I mean, I struggle every day. I'm with my county attorney constantly, especially interpreting like the subdivision exemptions laws and subdivision law in general, zoning too. And is there ever going to be some kind of planning help at the state level to assist us planners with more, like, I guess, standardization around the state as to how we're handling these statutes?
I haven't heard of any discussion along those lines. I suspect that the state would discuss lots of the complications that would come with that sort of an approach. But I would suggest if your county attorney is struggling with providing an interpretation and perhaps has come up with two conclusions to the same question, that the county attorney can request of the Attorney General's office either an informal or a formal opinion, and there is a process for that. They have that power. Unfortunately, you and I don't, but the county attorneys do.
Right. It's more so not that we're having problems interpreting. The problem becomes is that we reach out to the other 22 counties and everybody's interpreting it differently. So they're applying the rule one way in one county, and then you come to our county and we've determined to do it a different way. So literally people can cross from one county to another and get a different answer on the rules.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of the legal world that we all live in, regardless of jurisdictions.
Yeah, so true. Thank you.
So I guess Joy and Jeremiah, where is Representative Duncan out of?
She is out of Goshen County, but she grew up in Teton County and has great connections there to, in particular, the real estate world. And she's a realtor herself. So
that's probably where House 79 came from. Because Joy, this essentially would answer our question from earlier this year about if somebody did the exemption before the changes were made. Now this is clarifying how people have to wait, essentially.
Yeah, it does extend and perhaps I do think it is a clarity bill. I look at it, Duncan is the primary sponsor, but she has Representative Schwartz on there. So that gives me confidence that it is just a cleanup bill more than an attempt by her to go further, which she has been known to do. And we've all had to fight her on that.
Right. Because we just had questions, if somebody transferred property to their family member before February 27th, 2019. So do whoever they transferred it to, do they have to hold it now for the 5 years, or would they still be subject to the 1 year? So this essentially gives us that answer.
So I think it depends on how long the first person had possession of it, assuming that they met either the 1 or 5 year time frame. The new owner has to hold it for either 5 or 10, and I suspect, given that transition, it's the 10-year period.
Right. Have you heard of any other rumblings on subdivision changes, or that's kind of become a lower priority, fortunately, this year?
Yeah, this year I would not expect to see much of that. I'll just tell you, I was talking to one of the leaders in the House yesterday, and he was talking about dropping his top 3 bills because other priorities are just going to dictate where they go, in particular the budget.
Good. I guess somewhat good news for us anyway.
Sure.
Thanks.
Hey, Jeremiah, Eric Bingham over in Sweetwater County. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Eric. How are you?
Good. So just a question, a bill that we're concerned about, and I know you did a great job at your testimony at I think it was the Appropriations Committee on the industrial siding. Any indication as why they're reducing it from the 2.7 to 2? Because I guess basically that money goes back to the state, but why are they wanting to cut that? I do agree with what you're saying as far as putting better criteria in there, but any indication is why they want to reduce it, what the issue there is?
Yeah, so for those that don't know, industrial siding projects, and particularly the local impact payments, are paid for from the state share of the sales and use tax. So it's the 2.76% of the state share. So from there, the state, whether that's the Appropriations Committee, Don Richards in the Legislative Service Office, some on the CREG, are looking at the liability that presents for the state if all projects that are being proposed are funded at 100% of the local portion or the local impact assistance that would otherwise be available. Now, the reality is over time, only about 60% of that funding is going out to local governments from a variety of factors, whether that's your requests don't hit the 100% threshold or your requests are being tailored back by the Industrial Siting Commission. So, as those projects happen more frequently and get bigger, the state is profiling a tremendous sales and use tax loss on their tax rolls, and you'll even see them starting to profile it in CREG reports as well as on the goldenrod, and so they're seeing tens and hundreds of millions of dollars of potential risk, liability, financial liability from the state level, and they want to pull that back. Some of them believe that the Industrial Siting Commission is just rubber stamping. That's not the case, and we've been able to push back on it. But it really is about them trying to recapture more money for the state as it relates to that.
What's the Commissioners Association's position on that? Is it to not cut it? Do you know?
Yeah, so we've opposed those cuts in the past. We opposed this bill and were able to kill it last year. I suspect, given on that one particular point, we will oppose this bill, despite the fact there are other things we like there. I can't tell you quite yet because we will take that bill to our members in another week and a half for final consideration. But I suspect we'll oppose it. We are internally talking about other approaches that might sort of tier that 2.76. So for the smaller projects, you would get 2.76. Perhaps for the largest projects, it might be something less. That would help to reduce that profile that they're looking at, and but still allow us to deal with issues that exist. So I'm not ready to throw that out there, and I wouldn't talk about it too far and wide yet, but those are things that we're trying to look at to try and protect as much of that money as possible.
Thanks, Jeremiah. I appreciate it. And side note, I bought your book, Mountain Bike book. Excellent stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll be happy to sign it and humbled to anytime. So
thanks, man.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to say thank you so much, Jeremiah and Bailey, for doing this session for us. And WYOPASS really appreciates having the relationship with WCCA. So keep up the great work.
Well, thank you. It's our pleasure. And please do reach out if we can try and answer a question here and there.
I have to say thank you. That was a great presentation. It's coming from the city side of things. So it's awesome for your involvement.
All right, well, I hate to jump, but I'm going to get back to my legislative task here. And but I hope you all have a wonderful week and a great weekend upcoming.
Thanks, Jeremiah. And thanks, Bailey, too.